respected resource persons, and my dear friends. Good morning, all of you. On behalf of Mira Aziz Educational Society, established by my wife in Nashapur, West Godavari district, we are organizing a webinar on the importance of constitutional values. It's a great privilege for me. It is a great privilege for me to introduce our panelists to you, two towering personalities with us as resource persons today. Now, I will introduce these two towering personalities and our panelists to you in a brief, because if I list out their credentials, and this 1 hour is also not for enough for us. As a brief credentials regarding my guru, Professor A. Prasanna Kumar Garu, is a founder director of Center for Policy Studies, Visakhapatnam, and also a former dean of Andhra University. To his credit, many books, journals, national, international journals are there, and he wrote many books, including books on P.V. Narasimha Garu. And another additional credit for Prasanna Kumar Garu is he has given commentary, the radio commentary, almost 40 years to different sports like badminton, tennis, cricket, and all. So this is a brief view I am telling you, and I can send you the mail also about his credentials. Even you can check on the mail on the internet. Now, if you go for another towering personality in the legal domain, Professor R. Venkatrao Garu is a former Vice Chancellor of National Law School of India University, Bangalore, and presently he is the chairman of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies, New Delhi. He served for 31 years in the Faculty of Law, Andhra University, in various capacities. He held very important academic positions in Andhra University. He is a member of many executive councils of national law universities in different states. And also he served as a vice president, Indian Society for International Law, New Delhi, and other academic committees. Is a member, especially in the legal domain. And he delivered more than 100 endowment lectures in a convocation address. So if you look at, if you want his credentials, you can click on the Google for the rest of his credentials. Now I request our beloved professor. I was also the alumni of Andhra University, and we used to listen his lectures also when I was a student. Now I request Professor R. Venkatrao Garu to proceed. Sir.
Yeah. Good morning. Am I audible?
Audible, sir.
Thank you very much. Now, this is a morning with a difference for me. My grateful thanks to Dr. Sheikh Suleiman, our young friend, and Mira Aziz Educational Society, Excel, for conferring on me the honor of being thrown onto the virtual platform in the distinguished company of my mentor, Professor Prasanna Kumar, who during my sojourn in Andhra University was a role model for us. And it was blessings, guidance that are primarily responsible for what I am today. And my grateful thanks to Dr. Sheikh Suleiman for conferring on me the honor.
Thank you, sir.
And my greetings to everyone on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan. And in fact, the Constitution of India is the greatest Raksha Bandhan for every Indian. Now, I could say the Constitution of India is 70 years young today. When I say it is young, I mean it, because the institutions would never become old. It's only human beings who become old. And the Constitution of India continues to be young. And it has grown from strength to strength in the last 70 years. If you just go down the memory lane and go back to 1947 to 1949, 1950, you would find that number of countries became independent along with us in the subcontinent. Constitutions were drafted, but they were thrown overboard. And like a pack of cards, they collapsed. But it is the resilience and the inherent values that are present in the Constitution of India that made the Constitution of India grow from strength to strength in the last 70 years to such an extent that today every Indian considers the Constitution of India as a new Dharma Shastra for him in his life. And it has instilled such a sense of confidence in the rank and file that they consider the Constitution of India to be the holiest document. I'm not exaggerating even a wee bit when I recall the words of Nelson Mandela. When South Africa was liberated from apartheid, and Nelson Mandela, as the first president of the Republic of South Africa, was entrusted with the responsibility of drafting the constitution for South Africa. He rummaged through all the constitutions of the world, and he made a pertinent observation that, to my mind, the Constitution of India is one of the best in the world. And he took the help of the experts from India. And it delights me to share with you the information that experts from India, from Bangalore, Havanu, Ravi Varma Kumar, professors from National Institute of India University went to South Africa to help Mandela and his team to draft the South African Constitution. Now that was a tribute to the inherent values of Indian Constitution. And normally when we teach Constitution of India to our young friends, any classroom teacher would start with saying that the Constitution of India has borrowed everything from everywhere, including fundamental rights from Bill of Rights, directive principles from Ireland, so on and so forth. But most of the teachers forget to share with the youngsters two original and distinct features of the Constitution of India. The first one is, remember, 1947 to 1949 was a period when nobody even thought of international law. Notwithstanding the fact that the United Nations was established to save the succeeding generations of the Scouts of War in 1945, not much importance was given to international law in the domestic constitutions. But it was the vision of the founding fathers of our constitution that they have included in Article 51 4 subclauses making a mention about international law. Obligations arising out of international treaties must be respected. Your focus should be on international peace and security. And you must always try to settle disputes peacefully. Today in 2020, when globalization is a reality, and when the globalization has made the world interdependent, and when geography is becoming very fast a matter of history, and when people say it is either coexistence or no existence, everyone talks of international law. But 1947 to 49, including a provision for international law in the Constitution of India, and people say the Indian Constitution is the first constitution to have made a mention about international law. That's the first distinct feature. The second one is, in fact, Nelson Mandela made a reference to it. The Indian Constitution is the first constitution in the world to have made a mention about democracy at the grassroots. Panchayat Raj institutions. Later you had 73rd and 74th amendments and other things. But organization of village panchayats. These two are the distinct original features of the Constitution of India. Apart from that, one of the greatest values that you find in the Constitution of India is in the fundamental duties chapter, which we consider as 10 commandments. Today we have 11, of course. There is one fundamental duty which every Indian must keep very close to heart. And that fundamental duty says to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. The focus on the word excellence, but what do you mean by excellence here? Excellence in the product? I always say winning an Olympic gold medal by doping or duping, is it excellence? In the present world, when you have the rat race, where always people say, end justifies the means, where Mahatma Gandhi always used to focus more on mean, but not on the end. What do you mean by this excellence in the product? This fundamental duty ordains us to say that it is not only excellence in the product, but excellence in the human beings. So, because they know that even academic excellence without human excellence would be disastrous. Therefore, to make a human being human is one of the fundamental duties. And that is a great inherent value of our constitution. Now, the most important thing in the Constitution of India is the preamble and the preambular aspirations. If you look at the preamble of the Constitution, normally we go very fast through the contents of the preamble, forgetting two important words. It is not justice, etc., etc. In the preamble, our founding fathers have used the word to secure to all citizens justice, liberty, equality. But then they said to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual. That means securing justice, liberty, and equality, and promoting fraternity. Ambedkar is on the card stating that, what do you mean by fraternity? Fraternity means a sense of brotherhood of all Indians, of India being one people. That is what you mean by fraternity. It is a principle which gives unity and solidarity to social life. Without fraternity, equality and liberty will be no deeper than the coats of paint. That's what Ambedkar said. Therefore, the Indian Constitution focuses on fraternity and dignity, which is the summum bonum of the Constitution of India. In fact, people today say dignity cannot be traded off for anything, because a life bereft of dignity would become vegetative in existence. And when you look at the word secure to all its citizens, justice, look at the order, social, economic, and political. Here I'll be recalling to you the words of Dhananjay Kear, the famous biographer of Ambedkar, who wrote a masterpiece, The Life and Story of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. In that, in the chapter on the making of the Constitution of India, Dhananjay Kear says, Baba Saheb Ambedkar is great because the Constitution of India is great. And it was Baba Saheb Ambedkar who gave us the Constitution as the chief architect and as the chairperson of the drafting committee. The Constitution of India is great because, I quote Dhananjay Kear, he says, the Indian society is like a multi-storied building. Multi-storied building is a sign of civilization. But the second sentence is a bit disturbing. It is like a multi-storied building without either a staircase or an elevator. Now, where you do not have a staircase or an elevator, opportunities for movement, or what M.N. Srinivas calls as Sanskritization, would be limited. People who are born in the ground floor will continue to decay, languish in the ground floor, because birth, growth, and decay are the three essential attributes of any living organisms. People who are born in the top floor will have access to all the best things. People who are in the intermediary floors, they are neither here nor there, they get always sandwiched. But then comes the master stroke. The Indian society is like a multi-storied building without a staircase or an elevator. The Indian Constitution is the missing staircase. The Indian Constitution provides you the opportunities for movement. Now, that is the greatness of the Constitution. Then I would make a reference to Granville Austin's observation on the Constitution of India. He says the Constitution of India has three essential strands which speak to you about the inherent values of the Constitution of India. They are, number one, protecting and enhancing national unity and integrity. Number two, establishing institutions and the spirit of democracy. Number three, fostering social revolution to better the lot of the masses of Indians. I repeat again, to protect and enhance national unity and integrity, to establish institutions, spirit of democracy, then to foster revolution to better the lot of masses of Indians. These are the three webs which contain the values. And all these three strands are interdependent. They must prosper together or they will not prosper at all. Therefore, democratic political institutions, process of parliamentary system, then adult suffrage and independent judiciary. And here Granville Austin says, it is remarkable that a constituent assembly which was elected on limited franchise gave universal adult franchise even in the first year. We had 17 elections to Lok Sabha. And there were doomsdayers who said Indian democracy would collapse under its weight. It's only a question of time before it will wither away. But we have proved the world wrong. We grew from strength to strength because of the universal inertia phrase. And that little man walking into that polling booth, the belief, the confidence in his wisdom had proved to be true. And universal inertia phrase is another great value of the Constitution of India. And one more point I would like to share with you before I hand over the mic to Professor Prasanna Kumar. And in fact, I'm looking forward to listen to his erudition. One interesting word that comes across is these days, apart from constitutional morality, transformative constitution, the word constitutionalism. And people say constitutionalism means limited government. That means they always define constitutionalism from negative angle. But the beauty of the Indian Constitution is that it has constitutionalism not only from negative angle, it has also constitutionalism from a positive angle. Jurist N.W. Barber, who is a professor of political science, he says constitutionalism requires the creation of an effective and competent set of state institutions. That is the positive dimension of constitutionalism. And these institutions will make the state stand against arbitrary rule. And therefore, Indian Constitution has a set of institutions, a set that is able to act, a set that is able to become accountable, because institutions should become accountable, should be controlled by people whom it intends to serve, and it requires the political processes of accountability to complement the legal side of the Constitution. The beauty of the Indian Constitution of India is it makes a juxtaposition of the legal side of the Constitution on the one hand and the political process of accountability on the other. Constitutionalism is not only concerned with limiting the power of the state, but rather concerned with creating an institutional structure that facilitates the successful functioning of the state. That's the reason why in the last 70 years, India has been growing from strength to strength and almost proving people like John Galbraith, who in one context said, perhaps India is a functioning anarchy, wrong. And today, the inherent values of the Constitution are primarily responsible for the strength of our systems. Over to Professor Prasanna Kumar. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I request my guru, Professor Kumar Garu. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Suleiman. Good morning. My first duty is to thank Dr. Suleiman for so enthusiastically organizing this webinar. And a teacher, for instance, he says he was my student. Yes, it's a fact. I'm proud of it. And then a teacher's first duty is never to say no to a request made by a student. And when Dr. Suleiman said, sir, we'll organize a webinar, I readily accepted and I feel honored today. More particularly because when we were in the university, the Andhra University, a very famous university, Professor Venkat Rao was a youngster. He was a rising star, a very brilliant lecturer, speaker, and a very decent human being. We all used to like him. And today, sharing the platform with Professor Venkat Rao, who has risen to become a doyen of legal education in India, an outstanding Vice Chancellor, an outstanding scholar of law, and I feel privileged to be associated with Professor Venkat Rao. Now, Professor Venkat Rao may recall on this occasion, just for the pleasure of it, I'm recalling, a few years ago, the famous former Solicitor General and Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Sri Gopal Subramaniam, came to Visakhapatnam to deliver the D.V. Subbarao Memorial Lecture. And Professor Venkat Rao was a guest of honor on that occasion. And the words of Sri Gopal Subramaniam come to my mind on this occasion. He said it is the responsibility of every citizen, of every officer of the state, of every academic to diffuse constitutional morality, to which Professor Venkat Rao has just made a reference. Now, what is this constitutional morality? What is the importance of constitutional values? These are the two basic questions that have been eloquently answered by Professor Venkat Rao. I pick up the threads from the points he made. Now, oftentimes a question is raised. Has the Constitution failed the people of India? Or have the people failed the Constitution of India? It's a very interesting debate, and much can be said on both sides. In other words, nothing needs to be said on either side for that matter. Now, for instance, a famous writer has said that the foundations of Indian Constitution have been shaken by three very important reasons: the folly of the people, the corruption of our politicians, and the negligence of the elite. So if the foundations of the Constitution have been shaken by the folly of the people, the corruption of the politicians, and the negligence of the elite, it is the responsibility, as Sri Gopal Subramaniam said on the occasion, of every Indian citizen to ensure that the wheels are put back on the rails. Now, for instance, Professor Venkat Rao referred to the fundamental goals of the Constitution as enshrined in the preamble: liberty, equality, and justice. For instance, every democracy is dependent upon equality as its very foundation. Equality before the law is the foundation of a democratic republic, which India is. If every democracy depends on equality as the foundation principle, equal opportunity is the very foundation of social justice. So equality and equal opportunity, let us draw a line between these two. Equal opportunity is the very foundation of social justice. Therefore, a democracy depends upon the three very important principles enshrined in the preamble, to which Professor Venkat Rao has just now referred. Now, this does not exclude the other important element required in a constitution: equality, liberty, and also fraternity, to which he referred. Fraternity is a very important concept that has been enshrined in the Constitution. Now, it also means that there is a need for an aristocracy of talent, of knowledge, and of character. And these are very important for the stability of any democratic system of government. Now, for instance, a reference was made to the Supreme Court. That brings to my mind the wonderful role played by the Supreme Court of India on several occasions, especially in the famous Kesavananda Bharati case. The Supreme Court has saved the Constitution, become the savior of the Constitution. And Justice H.R. Khanna is still remembered with gratitude by the people of India for saving Indian democracy in a very important case. So these institutions, instead of referring to the adversarial culture which we often come across, for instance, the executive may try to dominate over the legislature. The legislature might try to control the executive too much. Only last year, we heard a joke when even Dr. Manmohan Singh, a soft-spoken gentleman, when somebody said the executive overreach is a problem of Indian polity, Dr. Manmohan Singh, very gently, very softly, with characteristic humility, he said, the executive overreach, if it is a fact, it is because of the judicial underreach. Therefore, this kind of very interesting situation, it's a kind of, we don't call it rivalry. It's a very pleasant fact of the Indian Constitution, a very acceptable fact of the Indian Constitution, that what is enshrined in the American Constitution, like the principle of balance of power and things like this, there is a scope for adjustability, for compromise, for harmony between institutions. When it was feared that the Parliament of India was trying to dominate, take too much of power into its hands at the expense of the judiciary rose to the occasion and set the house in order. The balance was brilliantly struck. Now, therefore, this kind of thing, for instance, in Indian democracy, the Constitution has provided enormous space. Perhaps, in my opinion, the most important thing that the Constitution has done is to provide for democratic decentralization, on which, unfortunately, there has not been much focus. Panchayati Raj institutions, for that matter. And you all accept the fact that no country in the world has provided by law 33% of reservation for women in institutions as India has done. It is something remarkable, something extraordinary. Now, what enabled the government to do it? The Constitution has enabled it. Therefore, the preamble, as Professor Venkat Rao very rightly stated in the beginning, it took off very well by referring to the principles in the preamble. That is why we often talk to students, please quote the preamble. Essential word in the preamble, in my opinion, is we the people. If we the people gave the Constitution to ourselves on the 26th of November 1949, then 33 crores of people or 330 million people. 4 times that number today, 1.3 billion people. It is the responsibility of 1.3 billion people to make course correction if it is necessary. It is in their hands. It is we the people who gave the Constitution, which is being hailed today. It is we who created the value system underlying the Constitution of India. And therefore, please remember, this kind of equality, liberty, justice, fundamentally referring to also equity, social justice, for that matter. As I said, equality of opportunity is most essential for promoting social justice. And there can be no good society. You always talk about GDP and things like this, 6%, 8%, 3%, etc. Forget about the GDP. Economics is a different subject altogether, though very important. But then the Constitution has provided space for every citizen, for every religion. That is why, as the great Bhagwan Das wrote, the beauty of Indian polity is the essential unity of all religions. That is the strength of it. In this connection, I would like to make a reference to that brilliant observation by Sir Ernest Barker about the Indian polity and the underlying strength. 2 important factors were mentioned by Ernest Barker, very brilliant points. One is, Indian polity is a blend of 2 things. One is the devout Indian tradition, philosophical tradition. What in my devout Indian philosophical tradition? Inevitably, one may say you are referring to the religious tradition. I'm not referring to that in particular, but let us also not ignore the fact that, as Swami Ranganathananda recently very brilliantly said, when Vivekananda addressed World Parliament of Religions in 1893, that day was the day of awakening of modern India. Therefore, that is why Max Muller, even he says, from Vivekananda to Gandhi, it was but 1 step. Take Mahatma Gandhi for that matter. Mahatma Gandhi, was he saintly in his approach to politics? Morris Jones very interestingly said, Mahatma Gandhi used saintly idiom. Mahatma Gandhi was a religious person, but he was more secular as far as politics was concerned. Even his critics conceded that Gandhiji blended secularism under the mask of religion. His prayer, for that matter, the way he used the name of God, and Gandhiji's greatest gift to the nation was bringing all religions together by singing a prayer for that matter. And therefore, the Constitution, in my opinion, has provided for space for every individual to enjoy the fruits of liberty, to enjoy the fruits of equal opportunity, and to strive for social justice, and to ensure that Indian democracy's stability is never affected by the passage of time or by circumstances that generally happen, that generally lead to some problems in politics, political circumstances. Therefore, it is in this context that I want to mention Barker once again, the beautiful element, foundation of the Indian Constitution, Indian polity is the blending of devout Indian philosophical tradition, which includes religion, which includes tradition, the values of all religions for that matter, with Western liberal ideas. What do you mean by the Western liberal ideas? The Western liberal ideas at the time, we must remember, two very important things happened. One was Roosevelt's Four Freedoms, 1941. Freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Roosevelt's Four Freedoms. And the Beveridge Report a year later. Against disease, against squalor, against ignorance, against idleness, we must fight. Now, therefore, it is against this background, Western liberal ideas blended with Indian tradition. And this beautiful blend of Western liberalism and Indian traditional value system, this is the strength of Indian Constitution. Therefore, when we refer to the Constitution, the values in the Constitution, let us not forget the fact that the people of India, the power is in their hands. It is the people who make, who nurture, who shape the Constitution, who make the Constitution what it is today. Let us, as Professor Venkat Rao very rightly said, 70th anniversary we have already celebrated. In the 71st year of the Constitution, 71 years may not be a long time in the history of a nation, but it certainly is in the history of a democratic nation. A nation that was once regarded as a role model democracy for Asian countries, today maybe it is facing several problems, man-made or because of nature or because of something else. So on this occasion, I would like to sign off by appealing once again to that very famous suggestion made by Sri Gopal Subramaniam, that it is the responsibility of every citizen, of every academic, every thinking Indian to diffuse, to spread constitutional morality, which is nothing but a value system nurtured by centuries of history and great sacrifice made by the Indian leaders. The greatest of them all being, of course, Mahatma Gandhi. So, Dr. Suleiman, I think I have exhausted my time. Thank you very much. Any question you arrange for me, I'm ready to answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, it's a message to our participants. We organized this webinar. The purpose, there is one with a purpose that we want to inculcate among the young minds to imbibe the constitutional values and to know the constitutional values. Now, there is a question from, I think, one of the, I'm reading out one question. Recently, a petition has been raised against the 42nd Amendment of adding socialist and secular in the preamble. What are your thoughts on it? Sir Venkatrao garu, I think you are able to.
Yes.
Can I repeat the question?
No, I followed it. See. Dr. Suleiman ji, I got the essence of the question that the insertion of the words
socialist and
secular
in the preamble
for 42nd Amendment have been challenged. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, Indian constitution right from day one has been secular.
Okay.
And there was no need for the explicit mention of secular. Okay.
Yeah.
But to reiterate and to drive home the point, the preamble has been amended. And please remember, when you look at fundamental rights chapter, we have not only freedom of religion, but we have also freedom of conscience, which is more important. That is the wisdom of our constitution founding fathers. They focused more on conscience. And when they said, you have freedom of religion and freedom of conscience, that means even if I'm not religious, I'm anti-religious, I have that freedom.
Yeah.
And therefore, see, the insertion of these two words is to add emphasis, to reiterate. And if you look at the entire gamut of the directive principles of state policy, almost all the directive principles of state policy speak about our commitment to certain socialistic values. Remember. And therefore, especially if you look at Article 38, 39, in my opinion, the life and soul of the Constitution of India are Article 38 and 39 of the Constitution of India, where you speak about equitable distribution of values. Because please remember what Dr. Ambedkar said when we got independence. We must be all careful to understand that we will be entering a dangerous era of contradictions. Contradictions emanating from there being political equality, but not being social and economic equality. And unless, remember, not only each vote, economic values also are equal. Remember, the hard-won freedom might be in peril. Therefore, the Constitution founding fathers, while drafting the Constitution, gave importance to, remember, socialist values also. But today, remember, in tune with the realities of the world, you have to interpret the socialist principles as evident from, please remember, the current socio-economic problems. Because as one of the Supreme Court judges said, constitutional problems cannot be studied in a socio-economic vacuum, since the socio-cultural changes are the source of the new values. Therefore, even Supreme Court judges, a judge of the Supreme Court is a social scientist in his role as a constitutional invigilator. Remember, and Kurian Joseph beautifully says, when you interpret the Constitution, you should not become subjectively constitutional, but you must become constitutionally objective. This is what is important. It's not subjectively constitutional, but you must become constitutionally objective. And therefore, you would fail functionally if you do not understand the dimension of these socio-economic values. And in the 42nd Amendment, just to give a manifestation of socio-economic values, the word was added. Okay? Right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I think Satya Sridevi Relangi, she's on the line, sir. I think she may raise one question. She may talk. Satya Sridevi, you can unmute your mic. You can speak.
Hello.
Yeah. Satya Sridevi.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm a student of Adhikavi Nannaya University. I'm currently studying second year.
Okay, good.
Sir,
Go ahead.
I would like to ask a question that
Okay.
as a student of political science, or
Okay.
as a people who studied political science, who are well. I'm sorry, sir. I'm like little bit.
No issue. No issue.
Sir, my question is that in order to make our constitution more successful, there is a need of imbibing the values of constitution in each and every citizen.
Yeah,
As we all know that India is a country of villages, still many people are unable to understand what the constitution is or what are the values that are that constitution is telling us. For example, if we take social equality, it has to rise from grassroots level of villages, right? So my question is that what are the measures do we take, or what are the measures that are necessary to bring out the awareness in the people who don't know who don't know the constitution, and who cannot understand what actually is there in constitution by easily explaining things.
I'll answer
Okay.
that question.
Thank
I'll
you.
answer
Thank you, Satya Sridevi. Professor
Thank you
Prasanna
very
Kumar
much.
sir will respond to your question. We appreciate Satya Sridevi for coming up with a question. Thank you. Now, sir, you can respond to that question.
Ms. Sridevi, thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
See, the UNESCO Charter says war begins in the minds of men. Okay? And the defenses against war must be built in the minds of the people. Good. Somebody wrote on this, commented on this very aptly, that the minds of the people are nurtured in nurseries. This is a very profoundly true statement. Nurseries here, it does not mean kindergarten schools. It does not mean small schools. It means every educational institution like the one you are studying in.
Yes.
It is in schools and colleges that constitutional values must be promoted by referring to them, by hearing about them, by reading about them, and by learning about them. Ultimately, as the UNESCO Charter said, and as somebody corrected, played upon it very well, it is in the minds of men if defenses have to be raised. The minds of men and women are nurtured in nurseries. We are what we are because we went to good schools, good colleges, good universities, and good educational institutions. And it is said, though it may appear to be a cliche, it is said that a true educational institution must provide three things: liberty, learning, and light. Liberty, learning, and light. Wisdom. You must encourage the youngsters to learn. Sridevi, you have asked a very good question, and people like you can promote awareness of constitutional values and constitutional morality. Thank you very much.
Suleimanji, I would speak to one.
Yeah,
Okay.
please, sir. Yeah, we have a time, sir. We have time. You can leisurely talk. Yeah.
Now, Dr. Sridevi,
Student.
one possible thing, even Sheikh Suleiman can
Yes, sir.
take the initiative in this.
Okay, sir. Sure.
You know, most of the schools,
Yeah.
we recite national anthem. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And okay, daily national anthem we recite.
Okay.
Along with the national anthem,
Yeah.
if the preamble of the Constitution, you translate it into vernacular language. You need not read it in English. Okay, you translate into vernacular language. And daily, you make the students read the preamble in vernacular. Okay. And the constitutional values mentioned there. Okay. And the fundamental duties. Okay.
Yes, sir.
If it is done systematically, right from as Professor Prasanna Kumar has rightly said, remember, it is the human mind ultimately, okay? And Eleanor Roosevelt's statement that human rights are nurtured in nurseries, isn't it? Therefore, along with national anthem, if we make it a practice to recite the preamble in the local language, in the vernacular, and the teacher explains the significance of that, and they say youngsters are like liquids. They don't have a shape of their own. They assume the shape of the container, and we will provide them this container called constitutional values to them when they walk from the institutions to the universe. So that suggestion can also be made. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think now no more questions. And before I conclude, sir, I request Prasanna Kumar, sir, anything to before close our session?
No, thank you. And thank you for bringing Professor Venkatrao and me together. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah.
And that you being there,
yes, sir.
It is a kind of reunion of Andhra University alumni.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
I'm also the Andhra University Alumni Delhi Chapter Secretary.
Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. We organized 2 meetings here also. Before I sign off, I profusely thank my Guru, Professor A. Prasanna Kumar Garu, and Professor R. Venkatrao Garu. Really, for participants and attendees, it is a great opportunity to listen the views of these kind of towering personalities. And I request all the attendees and participants. I'm going to send the link of YouTube link of this session to everybody. Please go through it, and also you pass on this information, this YouTube link, to different colleges, different universities, even different schools, to headmasters of different schools. Thereby, the purpose and objective of this webinar will be fulfilled. Once again, I thank very much. I think this is the second webinar. Earlier, we organized one seminar on P.V. Narasimha Rao's birthday celebrations. Earlier, Prasanna Kumar sir and Professor Uday Bhaskar organized earlier. And we are coming up with more seminars. And before August 15th, on another topic, we are coming up, and we will let you know. And we'll send you whoever participated in this, and you will get emails about the webinar. So once again, thank you, sir. Thank you for your blessings and consent accepting my invitation and to come into this webinar, sir. Thank you, Anandal.
Thank you. Thank you.